Did you forget to stock these 10 crucial prepper pantry items? Hi, sweet friends. I'm Mary, and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferment, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning how to be a modern pioneer in the kitchen, consider subscribing to my channel. And don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. Now, before we get started, the first thing I want to mention is if at any time you want to jump ahead, be sure to open the description underneath this video where I'll have timestamps listing everything that I'm going to cover. And I'll also put those timestamps in the pinned comment because I know some of you have told me that's easier for you to access. Well, for those of us who are in charge of stocking our pantries, any part of our pantries, any part of our four corners pantry, our working pantry, our refrigerator, our freezer, and also our extended pantry, or what we nickname the prepper pantry, can find that we often get very focused on the food we need to stock. But there are a number of crucial items that those of us who are in charge of stocking the prepper pantry should also be focusing on. The first item almost seems like common sense, but it can be easy to forget about, and that is water. And now I'm not just talking about bottled water or even home canned water, because we can run out of those things. It's also very important to stock those supplies that can help us purify any water that we may need to use because we've run out of the water that we've stocked in our prepper pantry. Within your prepper pantry, you may want to carve out an area where you keep these crucial items. You could even put it next to the section that you've carved out for your survival pantry. That's your 2 weeks worth of food along with your meal plan that you may need in the event that you don't have clean water or electricity to be cooking with. So in addition to any bottled water or home canned water that you keep on hand, you want to make sure that you have something that you can use to drink water that may not be as clean as you would like it to be. And those type of products are usually called life straws. Also, keeping purification or water purification drops on hand can be very helpful. Even a little bit of bleach can be very helpful. These type of things will help you purify your water in the event that you're not able to boil it or to clean it in some other way to make it palatable. And another item that you want to think about stocking along with your water supplies is something called a water bob. Now, these come, that's a particular brand name, but these come in different varieties. You can even just line your bathtub with a plastic liner. Some people have done that. But basically, a bathtub can hold about 100 gallons of water. So if you know that a storm is coming, you can put this water bob or some other type of liner into your tub, and you can fill that, and you will have 100 gallons of drinkable water. Now, if you're a little uncomfortable about drinking water that comes out of a water bob or other type of liner that you would line your tub with because you feel that, it's coming in contact with the plastic or whatever the case may be, that will at least give you 100 gallons of water that you can use for personal hygiene. And in any type of emergency, if you're without water, you may be very happy that you have that extra 100 gallons in your tub. Number 2, the second item that you want to be stocking, and you may already have this on hand because you've included this as part of your food supplies, and that is white vinegar. Often if you're a home canner, you probably do have this in your pantry, and white vinegar generally comes in 2 strengths, 5% acidity and 9% acidity. Now, if you can't find 9% acidity, don't worry. The 5% acidity is excellent as well. Now, is vinegar as strong as bleach at disinfecting, or as strong as some of the products sold at your grocery store that are made for disinfecting? No. But would you want to put bleach or some disinfectant spray on your skin? Probably not. But you can use the vinegar, the white vinegar, either the 5% or the 9%, to kill bacteria on your skin in the event that you have some type of incision or some type of wound that you want to prevent from getting infected, or you may have to try and work at clearing up an infection. Let me tell you a story about that. I had to have a minor operation on my foot, which left me with an incision that was maybe about an inch or two long. Now, the surgeon told me to keep it very clean because incisions in the foot or the lower leg are often those areas of the body that are most prone to becoming infected. As we age, we may not have the perfect circulation there, and no matter what our age is, these parts of our bodies are closer to the ground, and with dirt kicking up or dust kicking up, even if you do your best to try to keep that incision as clean as possible, it is more likely that an infection can develop. And that is exactly what happened to me. Although I kept that incision so clean and I did my best to change my bandages and so on and so forth, it wound up getting infected. But guess what? This was exactly at the same time the pandemic was breaking out. And my surgeon's office had to be closed because, as you may recall, a lot of doctors' offices had to be closed during that time to preserve all of the resources for people who may be getting sick. Well, luckily, the surgeon had given me her cell phone. So I texted her a picture of the incision on my foot, and it looked very angry. And I asked her, what do I do? So she said, well, I'll call in a prescription for you. So that's what she did, but keep in mind, this is at the time when there were lines to get into the grocery store and only so many people were allowed in and so on and so forth, and there were shortages and whatnot, and pharmacies were very busy trying to come up with solutions for people who might be very ill and so on and so forth. Plus, given my age, I'm in my mid-60s, and back then, we didn't know anything about this virus. I think everyone was a little scared and you were a little afraid to go out. Also, if you wanted to have something delivered, because so many people were wanting things to be delivered, there was a backlog. Well, in any event, the doctor told me, the surgeon told me, take a solution of white vinegar and water and get a clean cloth and put a compress on your foot twice a day, morning and night, and leave that compress on for 10 minutes. So that's what I did. Now, I won't lie to you, that thing burned like the dickens, but it was working. Now, eventually I got my medication. There was some sort of salve and I think an antibiotic, but in any event, the white vinegar, I think, is what really did the trick. And I was so surprised, and I said to the surgeon, I'm just shocked that white vinegar is working. And she said, oh yes, it's very good at killing bacteria on the skin, and specifically a type of bacteria that is around us a lot in the air and whatnot. And when we have an incision, it's a little harder for that incision to fight off this bacteria that under normal circumstances our body can fight off these various bad bacteria that are around us. But it's a little different when you have an incision. So make sure that you have white vinegar in your prepper pantry. It's going to come in very handy. And now, granted, you can use it to make salad dressing, but if you run low on first aid supplies, or you just don't have any first aid supplies, white vinegar may wind up being your best friend. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not any kind of medical professional, and I'm just sharing with you information that my doctor shared with me, but certainly if you have a serious medical condition or even an infected incision and you can get to your doctor, certainly you want to do that. Now, although not a vinegar, there is just a little bonus item that I want to share under this number 2 category. And I find this funny because this is something my mom, who's 97 years old, by the way, would always have in our house when I was growing up. Now, I'm not a drinker, my husband's not a drinker, my mother's not a drinker, but my mother always said that if you want to be prepared, always make sure you have a bottle of whiskey in your house. Now, I know we've talked about this in the past, and many of you have said, yes, it's great for bartering in the event of an emergency and you need some food and you have a bottle of whiskey or whatever the case may be. But my mother always kept this on hand as a disinfectant. And what she would do, and this is definitely something to consider if something, is maybe troubling you in your mouth and you want something a little maybe over and above a mouthwash. But my mother always felt that the dentist was not particularly clean. This was her own personal opinion. And whenever she would get home from the dentist, she would go to the kitchen sink and she would take a little bit of the whiskey, really swirl it around her mouth, and then spit it out into the sink. So I always got a kick out of that. So she would always say, make sure you always have a bottle of whiskey in your pantry. And it's kind of funny because you hear people say, oh, I just have it for medicinal purposes. But it really might be for medicinal purposes. And again, I'm not a doctor, but I think that having some type of alcohol on hand, you could even keep some vodka on hand because you may have that from when you're making your own homemade vanilla extract or other flavored extracts, but just some type of a little bit of alcohol that in the event of an emergency, you may not be able to get to the dentist and you need maybe something that'll provide a little numbing help. If you don't have some of the products that are sold at the grocery store or the pharmacy to help with tooth problems until you're able to get to the dentist, that whiskey might just come in handy. Number 3, now I've mentioned this to you before in previous videos, and I definitely wanted to include it in this video because sometimes this can be very easy to forget, especially those of us who are traditional foods cooks, because we like to keep sea salt on hand. However, sea salt generally doesn't have any iodine in it. So you want to make sure that you at least have a couple of containers of iodized salt. Now, why do we want to keep a couple of containers of iodized salt? Because iodized salt contains, as the name implies, iodine. And in the event that we were in a serious emergency, and wherever we lived, I live in the United States, wherever we lived in the United States, or around the world, and we lived inland like I do, and we're not able to have sufficient foods like seafoods that are rich in iodine, there's always the potential of developing goiter. And that's enlargement of the thyroid. And the thyroid controls a lot of systems in our body, so we always want to keep our thyroid healthy. And it's because of goiter is how salt became iodized. Because here in the United States, people who lived inland, and this is going back many years, who were not able to get fresh seafood because there was not the transportation facilities the way there is now, but who were not able to get fresh seafood, were beginning to develop goiter. So the government, the United States government, started iodizing the salt. Salt was very easy to transport as opposed to fresh fish. And so people could start using the iodized salt to keep their thyroids healthy. And hopefully if they had goiter, maybe it would begin to eliminate it. So you always want to make sure that you do have, even though you use your sea salt, I love sea salt, whether it's the wet gray French sea salt or the real salt from Utah, whatever type of sea salt you use, you do want to make sure to keep some iodized sea salt on hand, especially for emergencies where you may no longer be able to get fresh fish and maybe you've run out of your canned fish. Now, this may also seem like common sense, but how many of us have been in a situation where we have canned foods and we go to use them and we suddenly realize that we have no electricity, so our electric can opener doesn't work, and we don't have a manual can opener. So make sure you have a manual can opener. Now you might say, oh Mary, I just keep those pop-top cans in my pantry. Think twice about that. Those pop-top cans are wonderful, but often it's believed that they don't have as long a shelf life as the cans that are not pop-top. Now, as we've learned from the U.S. Department of Agriculture here in the United States, canned goods basically last forever. Yes, they may degrade in nutrition or taste over time, but they're still good well beyond their best by date. However, that degrading in nutrition and that degrading in flavor may happen quicker with your pop-top cans. So with that in mind, make sure you do have some canned goods that are just regular canned goods, and make sure you've got that can opener, that manual can opener. Now, one tip I do want to share about manual can openers, I know some of you, and I understand completely, may not have the dexterity to use a manual can opener, or it may cause you a little pain if you've got some arthritis in your hands. The good news is there are many varieties of manual can openers that are made to run on batteries. So if you make sure that you keep fresh batteries and a manual can opener that can run on them, then you're all set to open any can you want. Number 5 is very important. And this is something to keep in mind, which I have heard from so many of you in comments and emails, that you are in a living situation where in the event you had no electricity and you had no way to cook, you are not in a situation where you can go out onto a patio, weather permitting, and cook food outside. So what do you do that you can use inside, but at the same time doesn't cause you stress? So you might be saying to yourself, oh yes, there are certain things that do cause me stress. What are those? You have shared with me you're very uncomfortable about keeping a little propane canisters and the little propane run stoves in your apartment or in your home because you may live in a very warm climate and you worry about things that are combustible, or even a very cold climate, or extreme temperatures, and you worry about combustion and fire and so on and so forth. And I am so with you, I understand this completely. The easiest thing to do is to get a good sized trivet. Not so much one of those little tiny ones, but a good sized trivet. And they do make them, they're very popular. They're cast iron, they're quite heavy. You put them on a flat surface that's steady, and then you have your tea lights. They generally take 3 tea lights, and you would be amazed how you will be able to heat food on those. Just make sure, which you probably already have this, is just a few little saucepans with lids, things like that, and then you can use that to warm food. There are also little teapots and little coffee pots that are made to go on these trivets and can warm water for you for hot tea or for using in what other foods you might have on hand that require the adding of some warm water. You can even maybe do a little percolator of coffee, or you can use one of those little Italian espresso coffee pots that are made for going on the stovetop. So you have a lot of options. The only thing you want to be aware of, and especially if you have children, is that you have that trivet in a safe place, preferably a high counter on top of something that is fireproof and that is steady. And then you will be able to warm food and water. Now I want to mention, most of these things are things you can find very easily out, as I often say, in your travels when you're shopping. But I will put links in the description underneath this video so that you can get all of the details you need, and then you can take your shopping list with you when you go out and look for these items. And definitely check thrift shops, because you can often find some good things there. And if you are absolutely stumped and can't find the things you want, then you can use those links, but do a little price comparison and really read all of the details, especially about some of the items that I'm going to talk about coming up. It's very important that you really learn exactly what you need to fit your needs. Now, getting back to the trivet, you also want to make sure that you have some way to light the tea lights, because you're going to need tea lights also to put underneath your trivet. And they usually have a little sections of the trivets to hold the tea lights, so it makes it nice and safe. But you're going to need some way to light those tea lights. So certainly, you might just have some matches in a kitchen drawer. Having waterproof matches is probably a very good thing to keep on hand. and to have some sort of portable lighters, these little lighters that that have a little lighter fluid in them, and you often use to maybe light your fireplace if you have a fireplace, but those have kind of a nice long neck to them and can be very easy to light the tea lights once you've placed them into the trivet, as opposed to having to light them and then try to put them into the trivet. So these are things to think about. Now, I do want to mention, I'm going to link to a video that I've done previously where I talk about how to stock your prepper pantry with a 2-week emergency food supply. And in that video, I also have a link where you can print out the shopping list of all the things I tell you to buy, but I also share a meal plan with you, and you can print that out too. And I show you how to use all of these foods in the event that you do not have fresh water or you do not have electricity. And what I recommend is keep all of that food in one specific place, maybe even a couple of boxes, something like that, in your prepper pantry, and then take that meal plan, print that out, and tack it to the box or boxes where you're keeping all of your emergency food. Because this way, God forbid, we have, like here in Texas, we had that terrible winter storm in February of 2021. And if I had set that up in advance, I learned my lesson, I could just grab that and then follow the meal plan so that I could be heating food up on my trivet with my little saucepan or with my frying pan or making coffee or whatever the case may be, and everything would be streamlined because I would have everything in a box and I'd have my meal plan. And the meal plan that I've set up for you goes for 7 days. So hopefully by then, whatever emergency we're facing will be resolved. But if not, you just can start back again and work through. And hopefully after 2 weeks, things will be better. Because I recommend that for this emergency food supply, you do keep 2 weeks worth of food on hand and just work your way through that menu or meal plan and then start again at the top and work through it again. And I show you how to buy enough food based on, it's kind of based on a family of 4, so to speak, but you can easily increase the amounts. And I talk about in the video how to determine how much food you need based on how many people are in your family. So definitely go and look at that video, print those out, and there's no email required. Print out as many shopping lists as you want, as many meal plans as you want. Share these with your family and friends. We really need to help each other, especially during these times. So definitely go watch that video and print those out. I think you're going to find that's going to give you amazing peace of mind, knowing that you're prepared in the event that you're in a situation where you have no water and you have no electricity. Number 6 is a very clever item. It's very affordable, and you are going to love having one of these if you don't already. And this is a temperature monitor for your refrigerator and your freezer. This little device is so clever. The back is magnetic and it runs on batteries, and all you do is tack this to the front of your refrigerator. And it's, as I said, it's magnetic, it'll go right on. Then this device comes with 2 sensors, one for your refrigerator and one for your freezer. And we actually have 2 refrigerators, so we actually have 2 of these. I have a refrigerator in my laundry room, and we do the same thing. We put this on the front, one goes in the fridge, one goes in the freezer. What this does is it will tell you what the temperature is in your freezer and then what the temperature is in your refrigerator. And this can be set for Celsius or Fahrenheit, so that's a nice thing to know. Now, this really helped us during our February 2021 snowstorm. And I know to those of you back east, it sounds funny when we say snowstorm, but we had thick ice and then we had snow on top. And granted, it wasn't 3 feet, but it is so debilitating when you live in an area where you're used to a warm climate most of the time. We also, during that storm, had no power. So we monitored this little device, and you can set alarms so that if it drops below or above a certain temperature, it will let you know. Well, we monitored our refrigerator temperature. And as it was getting higher and higher and higher, and to the point where it really couldn't act as a refrigerator anymore, and we were getting into a situation where our food may start to go bad, we transferred our food to a cooler, just a plain old regular cooler. And since it was like 5 degrees outside, we moved our food outside. Put the food in the cooler and moved the cooler outside, and just put this device in the cooler to kind of monitor what the temperature was, moderating at, but what the temperature was being maintained at. Now, a tip that a friend gave us, which was very smart, was what you can do is you can quickly take things out of your refrigerator and put them down into your freezer. And then you have to do it very fast because you don't want to let a lot of the cold air out of your freezer. But if there are certain foods in your refrigerator that you want to extend the coldness of, and maybe the situation isn't where you have cold weather outside, but instead warm weather, you can quickly try to get those refrigerated foods down into your freezer to buy you a little time. Now, you don't have any electricity, so yes, your freezer is warming up as well, but it's going to take longer for your freezer to warm up than it is your refrigerator. And so you can keep some of those foods cold longer, and then your monitor will tell you what the temperature is in your freezer as it's also increasing. And then at that point, you're going to need to do something else. And that's what we're going to talk about next. Now, this is number 7, and it really has kind of 2 parts. I'm going to call it 7A and 7B. They're all the same thing, but in a way, the 2 different things operate very differently. If you are in a situation where the temperature is rising in your refrigerator and the temperature is rising in your freezer and your power has not come back yet, you want to maintain the coldness of your food in a cooler that is a very significantly insulated cooler. And this type of cooler is often sold under the brand name Yeti. These heavily insulated coolers are better at keeping cold foods cold longer than just your standard cooler. So if you have very frozen food, or even those frozen cooler pieces that you see, they're often blue, and you put them in coolers, standard coolers, to keep cold food cold and so on and so forth. Whatever the case may be, whatever you have in your freezer, you can go ahead and put that into one of these very heavily insulated coolers, and you can also put in some of your refrigerator food. And then you can go ahead and put this device in there and then monitor what the temperature is in that heavily insulated cooler. So that's kind of a basic setup where you're going to rely on your fridge and your freezer and monitor the temperature and hope that at some point your power comes back on. Or if not, and you're in a cold climate and you have just a standard cooler, you're going to put things in that standard cooler, put them outside, that's where my door is, put them outside and continue to monitor the temperature. Or, if you can go one step further and invest, those are expensive, if you can invest in one of those Yeti type coolers, and other companies may make them as well, not just my local grocery store, but there may be those sort of those big camping stores and whatnot, or even maybe some of the big box stores like Costco and Sam's, they may sell them. But if you go ahead and invest in one of those heavy duty coolers, you can then do the same thing, depending on what the weather is, getting all your colds in there, and then again, just doing your best to monitor it. But the next step, and this is what I call 7B, is to invest into an electric cooler. Now you might be saying, Mary, an electric cooler? What if I have no electricity? How is that going to help me? Now, if you decide that you want an electric cooler, you are going to need some other equipment to run that in the event that you have no electricity. Now keep in mind, if you decide to purchase an electric cooler, you're probably purchasing this for a real emergency. This is not something you're going to use just to try to keep some food cold. You're going to try to cook that food if you can, one way or another, and use up whatever perishable items you have. These electric coolers are really designed to help you in the event that you have no electricity, potentially for a bit of an extended period of time, and you have items such as medication that must need to be kept cold no matter what. So if you are in that situation and you are responsible for maintaining your Four Corners pantry, including the refrigerator, and you know that you have some things in there that under whatever circumstances you may be presented with that you need to keep cold, then you want to think about investing in some type of electric cooler. And these come in different sizes. However, if you invest in one of these electric coolers, you are going to need some type of generator or power station to run that electric cooler when you have no electricity. Now, these electric coolers are made to run off of different power sources. You can even run it off of your car, but you may not want to run down your car battery in the event that you needed to leave your home in an emergency. So what are your options? Now, keep in mind, this is not a sponsored post. All I am sharing with you are the different types of devices that we use and that have helped us in emergency situations. We have a small electric cooler, and we also have a Jackery power station to run it in the event that we don't have electricity. And a Jackery power station is basically a solar-powered generator. Now, that's just the particular brand that we use, but there are a lot of brands who make these power stations that run off of solar panels, and we'll get to that in a minute. But you can go to their websites and they will tell you what each power station can run. It can maybe run your electric cooler, maybe it can even run your refrigerator, or maybe it can just run your coffee pot, and so on and so forth. So you can get the solar power station that meets your needs. Now, as I mentioned, it's a solar-powered station. It's not a gas generator, which I feel comes with various complications that make me worried. Storing gasoline, can I get gasoline? When there's no electricity, will the gasoline pumps work? And that is something that I personally never wanted to have to deal with. Everybody's different. So if that's something you're comfortable with, definitely look into that, and definitely share in the comments below what your experiences have been using gas-powered generators or gasoline-powered generators. But I have been very happy with the Jackery. Number one, I like the shape of it because it's kind of easy to carry. It looks like a cooler with kind of a nice handle, and so it definitely, I mean, I know this might sound a little funny, but as a woman, I find that it's something that I can lift. Now, with that, you're going to need solar panels. Now, the solar panels are very easy to manage. They're foldable. I think there's videos all over YouTube where people are showing portable solar panels. And obviously, you need sun, you need dry weather, but you can put them outside, and they will be able to power your little power station. Now, you're going to need different power cords that connect your solar panels to your power station, and then different type of power cords that attach to whatever items you're running off of your solar generators. So there are different supplies that you're going to need, and I'll put more information about this in the description underneath this video. But you can definitely go and look online at any solar power generator or solar power power station online. Jackery, as I said, is just the one we happen to use. I think Energy is another one. And I'm sure there's a whole host of them where you can learn more. But definitely, if you have something in your refrigerator that needs to stay cold under any circumstances, then looking into an electric-powered cooler is really going to be crucial. That's probably one of the most crucial items that you're going to need if you're in charge of keeping your prepper pantry well stocked. So under this whole umbrella of topics for keeping foods cold, we talked about 7A and 7B, the two different types of coolers, and then number 8, which was discussing some sort of solar-powered generator or solar-powered power station. So 7A, 7B, and number 8, these I feel are extremely crucial for the person in charge of the prepper pantry to be knowledgeable about and potentially stock in your prepper pantry. Now, one more thing that I want to mention, which is a very clever device. This is called a Kilowatt Easy, and what this does is you can plug any item in your house, any electric item in your house, into this device, and then plug this device into the wall, and it will tell you how much power that particular device uses. Now, do the websites for the different solar generators or solar power stations share this information with you? Yes, but it's in generalities. A refrigerator may take this much power. An electric cooler may take this much power. This will tell you exactly how much power your device takes, and then you can take that information and use that to determine what level of a solar generator or solar power station that you would need. And we learned about this device from a very good friend of ours who is an outstanding prepper, and we just thought this was so clever. And since we do have one of those electric coolers that I talked about in item 7B, and we do have the Jackery power station to help us run it, we liked the idea of knowing exactly how much that electric cooler would need in terms of power to make sure that we did actually have the correct Jackery. And if there were other Jackeries we wanted to get for different other appliances around our house, we would be able to know exactly what we needed. So this is a very reasonable device, and it's well worth it. So there's a lot of little gadgets, but I'm telling you, if you're in charge of your prepper pantry, these are the type of things that are really going to come in handy and help you in the event that you do face an emergency. Now, number 9, this too has kind of an A and a B. The first thing you want to make sure is that you have flashlights. And if you're worried that, oh, what if I forget batteries, or you go and you look and you don't use batteries a lot, and then you go and look at your batteries and they're just no longer functioning, the stuff inside has come out. How many of us have been in a situation like that? I know I have. I'm raising my hand. But what I like to keep on hand is a crank flashlight. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen these, but they're very common, and all you have to do is crank it up and it will give you light. Is it a high-powered flashlight? The ones I have, no, are not. But they are wonderful for giving you the light that you need in an emergency. And what's nice about these is that even if you're away from home, they're easy to take with you because they're small and they just have the little crank will pop, it'll fold back in, but you can just, crank it best you can and it'll give you some light. And that can be a wonderful device to have that's very handy. Yes, certainly you can have electric lanterns. I love those. But if you find that you want something that's just small and that can be nearby, maybe on your nightstand as opposed to having a big lantern, even the electric lanterns, you just want a little something that maybe you can tuck into a drawer so that if you're sleeping and then you suddenly notice that it's exceptionally quiet in the house. That's what we noticed during the storm of 2021. It's exceptionally quiet. And you open your eyes and you see that maybe your clock is not illuminated. You don't hear the heat or the air conditioning going, whatever the case may be. Being able to just grab that little hand crank flashlight and give you some light to at least get things started, that you need to move along. You can get your lanterns or whatever the case may be. But I find that that's the perfect thing to keep in your nightstand, opposed to a high-powered flashlight, or even just any flashlight for that matter, that holds batteries. Because I have been in just one too many situations where I have not needed a flashlight for years, and I was not very religious about checking them and staying on top of them. And then when I went to use it, the batteries were no good. And sometimes they had even corroded the inside of the flashlight. So even if I tried putting new batteries in there, I couldn't get it to work. Maybe if I had the time to really clean it up and so on and so forth. But who wants to be in that situation, you know, in the middle of the night? So having a little hand crank flashlight that you never have to worry about and just keep that in your nightstand, that's going to be wonderful. And then that may allow you, depending on what your circumstances are and how you store your prepper pantry items, that you can crank and you can get into wherever your prepper pantry is and get the rest of your lanterns or whatever emergency supplies that you have on hand that you need. Now 9B, high-powered flashlights, and that's exactly what this is. This flashlight is fantastic. And what I especially love about it is this little piece on the top here is glow in the dark. So if you put this somewhere and you just keep this in an area where you need to grab it, I usually just keep it right back here behind me on my little baker's rack, because I often have to take our dog out at night, and along one side of our house it's not very well lit. But I can just turn this on and it lights up the whole area. It's wonderful. Now, you always want to be checking on the batteries. Yes, you can use rechargeable batteries, and that is definitely something to keep in mind for when you do have electricity, and you can use batteries that once they die down, you can recharge them and so on and so forth. I think those are great. But just keeping a good supply of regular batteries on hand can be very helpful. And just check them. Don't be like me, that I was in the past, where I just forget about these things and then things corrode. Just make sure that you keep this in good working condition. As I said, I use this on a regular basis almost every night, so I know that it's working. I can check the batteries. I can put new batteries in it when they're running low, and just keep a couple of these around your house and keep a good supply of batteries that you stay on top of and that you know are in good condition and are working. And also, depending on where you keep your prepper pantry supplies, this is great to keep in that area, because when you go into your prepper pantry, especially say you didn't have a hand crank flashlight, and say you didn't keep some of these around the house, or you just don't see them, or you forgot and you're trying to do the best you can, but you know where your prepper pantry is or where you keep your prepper supplies. And if you have this there, you will see this glow in the dark, and you'll be able to grab it, light everything up, and find all the supplies you need. So I highly recommend a high-powered flashlight that has a glow in the dark button on it. Number 10 is something that I also consider very crucial, because this was something that brought my husband and I so much comfort when we had no power and were basically stranded in the house, because there was no going out, there was no driving. We had ice like this thick with snow on top of it. But what we did have was an emergency radio, a hand crank emergency radio. Now, yes, did we have cell phones? Of course. However, we knew, and I'll explain why in a minute, we knew that those cell phones were eventually going to run out of power, and we were not going to be able to charge them, and I'll explain why. But having that hand crank radio was such a godsend. We could listen to weather reports, we could listen to the news, we could listen to music. It was really very comforting. Maybe it sounds a little silly, but it was very comforting. But here is a word to the wise, and it's sort of like the same thing when it comes to flashlights and batteries. Make sure that you have a current radio, a current emergency radio, a current hand crank emergency radio. Now, the word that I'm focusing on here is current. Is it a modern? Is it an up-to-date hand crank emergency radio. And the reason that I tell you this is the one we had was not current. Now, if you have a little solar-powered station, a little solar-powered generator, you can certainly charge your phones off of that. Most of them are strong enough to power your cell phone, so that's definitely a wonderful thing to know. However, what if you don't have those, and you don't have one of those solar power stations, and you're just relying on your hand crank emergency radio that has different areas where you can plug things in and charge them based on your hand crank? The thing that I ran into was that I had not stayed on top of that hand crank emergency radio. It was old. Now it worked in terms of being able to listen to the radio, but it did not have the necessary jacks to charge our modern cell phones. Now today, these emergency radios are fantastic. Not only do they have hand cranks on them, they have flashlights, some have alarms, like for example, with emergency lighting, if you're caught on the road. So definitely having one in the car and one in your prepper pantry are going to be wonderful. And yes, they do run on batteries, but you don't have to keep the batteries in there, which is actually what I like to do. I like to not keep the batteries in there, so in case some time passes and I forget about the emergency radio, I know that it's not going to get all corroded and so on and so forth. But I can put clean, good, new batteries in it when I want to use it, or if I don't have batteries, I do have that hand crank ability, which I highly recommend. When you look for emergency radios, look for those that you can use a hand crank to power it. And it's really not bad. I was thinking you'd be cranking and cranking like this. It's really not bad. You crank it somewhat. I think my husband and I shared a little, of the job of cranking it. It really wasn't a very big deal. And now, the new ones, have a lot of bells and whistles. So definitely stay up to date with your emergency radio, because you're going to find having that is going to be wonderful if you don't have any electricity. Having it simply for the morale boost that it offers in terms of being able to listen to different things, and also being able to charge your cell phones that allow you to stay in contact with whomever you need to stay in contact with. And depending on what type of cell phone you have, it can probably provide a lot of entertainment. So just make sure that whatever emergency radio you buy, it's compatible with your cell phone. Now, if you would like to learn more about the Prepper Pantry, how to stock your Prepper Pantry with real food, how to do it on as little as an extra $5 a week, how to store your food for the long term, and how to prepare for emergencies, be sure to click on this video over here where I have a whole playlist that covers that and more. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country Kitchen. Love and God bless.